Welcome to another installment of the Final Scoop podcast. My name is Robert Schinetsky, the supplement engineer. Joining me is my international band of brothers, plus a special guest this week, and Aaron West, owner and founder of Performax Labs. Aaron, thank you for joining us, my sir. Robbie, Lukasz, it's always great to see your faces, and then Shane. You know, we're gonna give Shane a pass this week because Robbie and I were the difficult problem children this week that had to slant the podcast to Sunday, but. For the listeners tuning in, thank you for tuning in, joining us. Post up any comments, questions, queries, quips, smart aleck remarks you might have for us. If you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And since we have a special guest today, any comments you may have in particular for Aaron about the history, the founding of Performax, maybe what's coming on or anything like that, you know, what are his thoughts on the current state of the industry? Post up anything and everything, and we'll get to them. And last but not least, if you're watching on YouTube and it seems like your question's not getting in, I promise you we're not ignoring you. Hop on over to Twitch because sometimes YouTube gets a little stupid with the way it's bringing up its comment feed or whatever you want to call it. So hop on over to Twitch and you can follow us there on the Supplement Engineer channel. So, Aaron, it's been a while since we've had you on the show, man. First time on the Final Scoop is you and I have talked several times, you know, offline and had you on the Supplement Engineer podcast before. So what's going on?
A lot. We have a lot kind of upcoming that we really haven't released any information on. Obviously, we just kind of showed you guys. So yeah, without giving away really anything, we just have a kind of a lot in the back burner, and I think everyone will be really happy once we're able to kind of like put it out there and let the world see what we've been working on. But I mean, Performax, we've been quiet for a long time, probably like the good last year. Yeah, at least the last 12 months, we haven't really done much other than just continue to tick over. So yeah, we've just been working a ton in the background, kind of getting ready for something really big. So like I said, I really can't give out a whole lot. I wish I could right now, but probably in the next few weeks we'll be able to start releasing information and letting people know what we've been doing.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask questions. So I don't want you to give away any details or anything. I was going to say, do you have a target date or not? You don't have to be firm on it because if, you say August 1st and then, there's a delay with whatever happens, whether it's shipping, manufacturing, whatever, and, it comes out August 2nd, so people are going to say, well, Performax can't handle this, or it's another supplement company and they can't meet their deadline. So, is there a rough kind of thing?
That's been such a tough learning curve. I don't know, Robert, if you've had that too, but the idea of putting things out there and telling people this is when it's going to happen and it never happens, it's been like a tremendous learning curve for us. So yeah, we're gonna sit tight, we're gonna stay quiet until we know exactly the date exactly that we can kind of let info out. So it's been tough because I want to tell everybody what we've been doing and what we're working on and kind of what's coming. But like you said, it's really it slapped us in the face before when we've let the cat out of the bag too early. So I would say though that we should be able to start to get some information out, start to let people know what's coming early August. So that's a pretty big range, but somewhere in the beginning of August we'll start to put some info out. So
no, I agree with what Aaron said, that telling people the exact date or something like that, it just doesn't work anymore, especially with the way the state of the supplement industry right now, with all the delays and ingredients and whatnot. It's such a fucking bitch right now. So I agree. I mean, whenever it comes in just a ballpark, and that's enough. I think the fact that Performax is coming up with, I'm actually excited about it because it's one of the very, very few brands that I actually like. And, based on what I see and what I know, I'm pretty sure it's going to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. But at the end of the day, I think that's the right way to approach it.
Yeah. And like I said, we've had such bad experiences, giving out exact dates, and then we look bad like we did something wrong. And a lot of the times it's actually out of our control. And we had every intent, to kind of hit those dates. So it's one of those things where, given where the industry is now, given how hard sourcing is, the materials and everything you just said, we do want to kind of sit tight until we know that we can nail a perfect date. And when we get there, then that's when, we'll let the cat out of the bag, so to speak.
Perfect. Brooke is a longtime loyal listener, Aaron, so you're going to see her popping up in the feed a lot. So shout out to Lukasz for the shady-looking Polish parcel that mushroom coffee. You are all super swell people. Thank you for tuning in, Brooke. And I'm glad you got Lucas's shroom-laden coffee.
Glad everything came fast and furious, and I'm glad that you enjoy the parcel. So yeah,
man.
Kisses.
Do you have a favorite flavor yet, Brooke? Because there's 3 flavors and then like the original flavor. So do you have a preferred one thus far? Is what I'm curious about.
I believe I sent her only like 1 or 2 flavors. I don't think I sent her all, but yeah, she got some extras there as well, so she can try some goodies.
Yeah. Aaron, before we get too far into the weeds with the comments of people, I have a particular question for you because I've been getting a lot of questions on this either through emails or we've discussed it on the Final Scoop last week. Sandy and I again had a question about it, and Gerhard at Fitness Informant and I had a question about it. And I know Lucas is intrigued by it, but ecdysterone, and it's in max with you got the Raponticum carthamoides extract, so it's got ecdysterone plus a bunch of the other analogs in there as well. What are your thoughts on it? Do you think? Because Lucas, you brought up the combo of laxosterone,
laxosterone, acetosterone, and turcosterone.
Yeah, and so, but in my mind, that seems like it's redundant to stack. Like if you're gonna have something, do kind of like a full spectrum extract, like you're doing, Aaron. Whereas if you're just gonna substitute with those 2 same alkaloids, because turkesterone is an analog of ecdysterone, so it would be akin to something like supplementing with leucine and HMB or leucine and HICA, to where we know from the research side, like HMB in the presence of leucine is not really going to do a whole hell of a lot. So I'm wondering if it's the same thing here. Is it an additive effect? Is it that? So I don't want to dominate the conversation. I'm curious to see what you guys think as far as, is there a synergist or complementary benefit to stacking those 2, or is it just more window dressing on there?
What I will say is that Raponticum carthamoids and ecdysterone have quite a bit of research, whereas something like laxogenin actually doesn't have a whole lot of research. And so that's where I've always been more comfortable working with like ecdysterone and some of those other, basically plant steroids, for lack of a better term, than something like laxogenin, which, like I said, there's just not a whole lot of research on it. I think the Russians were studying it like, all the way back into like the 50s, 60s, stuff like that. So turcosterone, from my understanding, is supposed to be the most anabolic. It's supposed to be the most powerful compound of that group, but it's super, super hard to source. We were in contact with I think it's ICPS, the International Institute of Plant Chemistry in Uzbekistan, trying to get it directly from them, and we weren't able to source it at a reasonable price that would make sense putting in their product. Now, I guess there's products on the market that are using turcosterone, but again, what we found in our research is that it very, very much depends where you're getting this material from, where it's grown. For example, you can get ecdysterone from spinach, and all the research shows that if it comes from spinach, it has very little anabolic effect. However, if it comes from Raponticum carthamoids, it has a much, much greater effect. And there's this specific paper that we based max around, which basically just showed that the total, like kind of what you talked about, the total wide spectrum extract with all the ecdysteroids, in there, have a much, much greater overall anabolic effect than isolating directly for one. And we see that all the time. For example, epicatechin has some good research, but its absorption is going to be drastically improved if it's co-administered with green tea extract. And there's just other polyphenols, other things in there that are going to aid in its absorption. So that would probably be my reasoning to why we go with a full spectrum. There's likely other compounds in there that are aiding in the absorption, the permeability of ecdysterone that allow it to be more anabolic than if you were to take it by itself. But yeah, for laxogenin, I don't think Performax will ever put out a laxogenin product. Nothing against the ingredient. It seems to be a great ingredient. A lot of people like it. A lot of people want to take it. But for us, there's probably just not enough actual research on the ingredient to justify putting in the product for us personally.
Yeah. Lucas, where did you come across the trifecta?
Can you repeat, because I had an echo or something?
Yeah. With the in our chat for the listeners, we have like a little group thread between us, and you were talking about turkesterone, ecdysterone, and laxogenin. I guess, is there some other companies that are using that trifecta right at the moment? Is it something like you just came across in your own kind of wizardry? Like what's going on with that? Or I guess why those three in particular?
You know what? When I started, experimenting myself, I started with one compound, and I was using it just solely just to see my results just with this particular compound, just like I do with every single ingredient, just like I wrote you guys about the GABA and other compounds.
Yeah.
So first I added aldosterone as my base. I ran it for like 3 months. I've noticed a good improvements in my physique, not only in like strength increasement, but also like body fat and body composition improvements. After that, I decided to add laxosterone, which is like I think a better version of laxogenin. I ran it for also another 3 months solely. I decided to skip the aldosterone in the time, just to see if the laxogenin will have the good effect. And to be honest, I was really pleased with the effects, especially when I added extra meal that was higher in protein. I've noticed increase in my gains as well. And when I combined these two compounds, the improvements were ridiculous, to be honest. Right now I'm in my lowest weight since I started lifting. I'm 86.6 kilograms. I'm just like in my leanest. I am my strength is up so much. I'm the hardest, So yeah, man, the results just say by itself. And now I add the turkesterone to this combo. So all is going well, man. I'm just pleased with the results, and I'm just running the show. So yeah, we shall see how's it going to turn out. But like I said, with every compound, I think that you can start with 3 of them, but at the same time, what I would do is to just like slowly, just like with, for example, also nootropics, start with one compound, see how your body reacts to it, and then maybe add to it another compound, just to see if the combo will be effective or not.
What dosage are you taking of each of those ingredients?
Of turkesterone, I'm taking 250 milligrams twice per day. Laxosterone, I'm taking 3 times per day with every meal, so it's like 100 milligrams. And aldosterone is 300 milligrams 3 times per day.
Perfect. Awesome. John, hey guys, late today, but glad to catch you. We're glad we played a little tricky on everybody and switched it from Saturday to Sunday, so I'm glad we got anybody tuning in, just disrupting people. Matt Epton, love Alpha and Mass Max, running those for 8 weeks and wrapping it up with Hard Target for 30 days. Thank you, Robbie and Aaron, for producing solid, performance-driven products.
Okay.
That's awesome. Do you have a personal favorite product in your lineup, Aaron? I'm always curious about this with brand owners, because you ask them what supplements do you take, and they'll usually say, I take all my own stuff, and maybe sometimes they'll take a few other brands, like if their particular brand isn't offering a certain product. So what is do you have like one product that is just kind of like your baby that you always love no matter what?
I think it probably is Mass Max, just because there's a lot of research that went into it. It's it's a much different style product than I think what's on the market. And we just put a ton of time and research into that product. Like, for example, potentially ecdysterone, I believe it's considered a BCS class 3 compound, which basically means that it has high solubility and low permeability. And so, looking into things like that, we were able to add sodium caparate, which increases permeability, help potentiate that ingredient. We use methyl oleate and methyl palmitate in a cyclodextrin complex, which has shown in combination to be both anabolic and androgenic. They're basically fatty acid esters that naturally occur in drone's milk for bees. And they're able to do some rodent studies on it and showed that it had both an anabolic effect, and then when you added in, I believe, the methyl palmitate, to the methyl oleate also had an androgenic effect. Two compounds that I don't know of any company that's using at all. Our actualized extract, we put a ton of time and effort into sourcing, and it increases your ghrelin release, increases hunger. It has a huge effect on me. It allows me to eat a lot more calories and be very content, not feel bloated, not feel like run down, or not run down, but kind of bogged down, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the one product where there is just so much kind of new ingredients that we added in there that, and you got to think, MassMax came out, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. And so I feel like we're a little ahead of the curve on that one. And it's just a fun product to do. Like, pre-workouts are awesome, but like pre-workouts, it's just, at this point they get kind of cookie cutter, and same with fat, a fat burner, you're kind of pocketed into a list of X amount of ingredients that, are really going to work. Whereas MassMax, it seemed kind of like the world opened up to like, all right, let's see what we can do here. What compounds are we going to really research? Because it could have gone 100 different directions.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made MassMax probably the most exciting for me. I mean, same thing with all other products, EAAs, you're pretty pocketed. It's going to have EAAs in it. So I think, MassMax was probably the most fun product to put together, the most, one that required the most research and kind of most innovation. So I'd say probably MassMax is probably my favorite product in the lineup.
Awesome. Brooke, Performax Pre is one of my faves. Once I got through the 10,000 layers of duct tape, my younger sibling was over and tried one of those protein bars. US needs more of those. It's for and we tried both of the peanut spreads so far, Lucas. Mm-hmm. Dynamite, and they're halfling approved. She ate, went through like 7 spoonfuls of each when we let her go through them.
Yeah, I checked with some customs officers about the bottles, and I've got the green light. So next parcels are on the way, man. So
more Polish vodka headed my way. Yes.
Yeah. But speaking of Alphamax and MassMax, I believe my first interaction as far as like testosterone was due to this product. So yeah, man, shout out to you for putting it out there. And honestly, I'm personally a big fan of products like this. The pre-workout stimulants are always fun, to do and just to try. But when you got the products like this that are like more complex and like involve more chemistry and so on, that's what gears my gears.
Yeah, same here. It's just a way more interesting experience. And like, yeah, don't get me wrong, I think all of our other products are great, but it's just having that ability to kind of be able to use anything and just go out there and really kind of explore. Whereas, like I said, I think a lot of other categories, you end up kind of pocketed into certain ingredients that consumers come to expect. Like it has to have citrulline, or your fat burner has to have paradoxin, and it's just like you get real pocketed. Where it's like MassMax, most people turn that label around and go, okay, what the hell is any of this? None of this makes any sense, which I think is the coolest part about it, because then you get the whole like, hold my beer, let me explain, kind of a feeling. So yeah, no, I appreciate that, Lucas.
I guarantee you after this, Lucas is going to have a drone's milk jug of, like, he's going to have a jug of Jones milk so he can get the methyl olatate and methyl palmitate in there, because he's always trying, experimenting on himself for some way or other.
Yeah.
Sridhar, using my final scoop. I see what you did there. Of Hypermax Extreme Orange Mango. It's a great daily driver pre-workout.
Yeah, it's funny too. I only like like a scoop and a half of Hypermax. I don't like a full 2 scoops. I think 2 scoops is, for me personally, a little bit too strong. But it seems like that's where most people kind of fall. Most people fall with a full 2 servings. I mean, what do you guys think? I'm assuming most of you guys have tried a Hyper, right?
I'm a scoop and a half, usually, like a full scoop and a half. That's always been my, sweet spot. Even like going back over the various iterations of it over the years, that's always like the 300 milligrams plus all of the other fun stuff that's in there. That's kind of right in my sweet spot.
I personally always land with like 2 scoops because that's my sweet spot when it comes to like stims. So yeah, man. 2 scoops, perfect. I'm on for me.
If I said anything less than 2 scoops, I'll probably get crucified by people. But so I'm gonna say 2 scoops also. I mean, it's a very good pre-workout, and I agree. It's a good daily driver because it makes you feel. I subdivide pre-workouts. I actually did an interview, a podcast just about an hour ago with Review Brothers, and one of the questions was regarding pre-workouts, and I always say that the category is very, very subdivided, very, very subdivided. You cannot judge just one pre-workout as the greatest or the best or whatever because we all have different needs. And like Aaron said, for me personally, I like that. I always emphasize whenever you say something about pre-workout, what do you use? Make sure to emphasize personally or for me, because you cannot generalize and say that everybody should be taking 1 scoop of this pre-workout or 3 scoops of that pre-workout. It's just I think irresponsible and wrong, and what works for you might not work for me. That's the reason why there are so many, I think, categories with pre-workouts. And I think the market, you can say when it comes to protein or something like that it's either good or bad. But when it comes to a pre-workout, there are definitely a lot of different markets and different directions. Saying that, hypermax definitely falls into one of my all-time favorite pre-workouts, and generally what I recommend when I'm not talking about Apollon is because I think that it's very well balanced. I think that that's the key when it comes to a pre-workout. If you want something that will give you a certain level of pump, a certain level of focus, certain level of energy, then I think that this one is just hits the spot. And between 1 and 2 scoops, you can definitely go in any direction, whether it's a beginner or somebody intermediate or even somebody who is really a steam junkie in a way, because it will hit just right. So I think the balance is definitely there. So yeah, I like how you call it daily driver, because this is something that can be used on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think going back to what you were talking about before, regarding pre-workouts and what is the best, you were talking about like a very tangible feeling, right? And like you can't tell me what I want to feel. You can just tell me what you want to feel. And I think that's where it gets like so convoluted, where they're like, oh, well, this pre-workout's the best. Like, but maybe I don't want a shit ton of energy, or maybe I do. You know what I mean? And that might change on a day-to-day basis. So yeah, it's super difficult, I think, to say any pre-workout's the best or better than the other one, because you're talking about a real tangible effect that is kind of like a daily decision on what you need that day. You know what I mean? Like it could be an awesome pre-workout that gives you amazing energy, but if you're hungover, let's say, it's gonna make you feel like shit, right? On the other hand, you might be in like this like perfectly like have the best day, hit all your meals, great energy, and you might not need that much. So there's just so many different scenarios, and it's just I think when you're talking about the stim side of it, it's hard to say that one is the best or better than another, because it's just what do you need that day to kind of get through a good workout,
Absolutely. And that's the reason why it drives me absolutely nuts when brand owners come out, or somebody behind a brand comes out and says like, well, this is the best pre-workout on the market. You can't really say that, because at the end of the day, just like we have different taste buds, even with me, somebody asked me recently, what protein flavor by Apollon you recommend. I don't think I can. I have the right to recommend anything, because maybe I like chocolate and you like vanilla. We all have different tastes. You have to try it for yourself, and you know that better. And when it comes to pre-workout, yeah, I mean, I know that I use various pre-workouts. Sometimes I don't use any pre-workouts. Sometimes I just don't need them. I don't feel like there is a need for them. In fact, the last couple of days I've been working out on no pre-workouts, just didn't feel like using them. So I think, yeah, it's very, very tangible. And, if it's going to come down to what's the best or most popular or whatever, I mean, C4 is going to kick everybody's ass, because when it comes to popularity and sales, I'm pretty sure that they dominate. But at the end of the day, stick to what you do best and stick to your own market and let the consumer judge. And everybody will pick whatever they want. That's it.
Yeah.
John, got to go non-stim for a bit and try and reset. Just received bare knuckle and mojito for afterwards. That's a good mix to go there. And how is your caffeine intake getting, John? Is what I'm curious before you decided to tap the brakes and say we're going a little too much here. That's what I'm curious about.
What does it mean reset?
Yeah, Lukasz doesn't reset. Lukasz goes 500 milligram. That's his reset.
That's my reset per day. Yeah, man.
Wheats. P.S. I love them. We're going to assume that you're saying you love Performax. If there was a first half of the comment, it didn't get through, Wheats. So we're just going to assume you're espousing your love for all things Aaron West and Performax. All right, Aaron, you mentioned that pre-workouts, amino acid supplements, you're kind of slotted into one certain direction. Like you have to have certain things in there, whereas maybe the muscle builders give you a little bit more creativity. You get a little bit more flexibility. You can put things in there that maybe somebody else doesn't understand, like y'all have done with MassMax. Do you think the nootropic category is that open still? Like I think a couple of years ago, it definitely was. Nowadays, I almost think like if some people don't see like 300 or 400 micrograms of huperzine or alpha GPC in there, they're going to think it's underdosed or it's not effective or something like that. Whereas I still think there's, a whole avenue of nootropic supplements that the average individual doesn't understand. And you can get some of those effects that you maybe would get with huperzine and alpha GPC, but through some other ingredients. But yeah, what are your thoughts? Is it still as free and flexible or not?
I definitely think it is, but then it comes down to, what are companies kind of putting out, and I think, it's hard to explain. It's not hard to explain. It's hard to put into words. I think what's happened is with this demand for fully open and transparent labels has made it very easy to formulate product. And so I think what you're seeing now is a lot of formulators that are throwing in a lot of the same ingredients because they see other products doing it. And I think that's when you start to go into that like cookie cutter direction. And so I think now, you see people go, oh, well, that's a great nootropic. Let me look at what ingredients they're using, and then starts using those ingredients. And then that kind of like trickles down. And you get to a point where, like you said, everyone's using huperzine, everyone has to have some form of choline, blah, 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 blah. And everything starts to generally look the same. And I think that is one kind of, I'll probably get some flack for this, but I think that's one benefit to when there was prop blends. There seemed to be a lot more excitement. There seemed to be a lot more like, holy shit, I can't wait to see what that company put out. And then that company had a lot more like an ability to differentiate. Did a lot of companies use it to hide, underdosed ingredients? For sure. But there's some other companies that probably didn't, and were actually doing some real innovation. And they felt a little bit more protected by that. Obviously everything Performax does is full disclosure. So I'm not like making an argument against it. I still think it's best for the consumer. But I think what happens is you end up creating an industry with a lot of Me Too companies. And so when you get a lot of Me Too companies, you end up with a lot of Me Too formulas, and you start to see categories all kind of look the same. And so as more people put their foot in the nootropic category, so to speak, or throw their hat into the nootropic category, you start to see a lot of the same fucking nootropics. You know what I mean? And so I don't think so. I think there's a huge potential. I mean, nootropics in general is such is still in its infancy in terms of good formulas that I think we could really go in a lot of different directions, and there's tons of different ingredients to use. But what ends up happening from the consumer level, and ultimately we have to sell product, right? We're not in business, we can't sell product. Ultimately, from the consumer side, they see this nootropic and that nootropic and this nootropic, they all have huperzine. Okay, well now if I'm going to have a good nootropic, it has to have huperzine. So then you get consumers kind of like what you're saying, demanding that they have this ingredient only because they've seen it in 5 other products, only because 4 of those people ripped off the first guy. And now you have all the same shit, And so I think hopefully, more companies will kind of, differentiate themselves and try and push the boundaries a little bit. And it will be difficult because you have to educate the consumer. because they're not going to know. You know what I mean? Like it's a big problem with selling Max in stores. We don't really have a lot of retailers that pump a lot of Max because the guy behind the counter can't really explain it very well. You know, he hasn't seen half those ingredients before. And so, I think hopefully companies, continue to try and innovate and bring new ingredients to the market, and maybe not even new ingredients, just innovative combinations, and not fall into the trap of using the same ingredients that the number one nootropic is using, because you want to get that nod that you have huperzine or CDP choline or whatever else is commonplace in nootropics,
Well, then how do you balance that as far as, because as a brand owner, formulator yourself, you know what some of the consumers are expecting in your products. At the same time, you pride yourself on being innovative with your formulas, finding common ingredients that aren't necessarily there, but you still at the same time want to sell a lot of units and ultimately be a successful business owner. So where do you draw the line, or how do you just, do that balancing act?
I don't know. I don't know that there's like like one good answer for that. I guess it's trying to use ingredients that are differentiated, but I guess maybe pairing them with ingredients that people kind of understand. So yeah, I don't know exactly how to answer that question per se. I don't know. Can you ask it in a different way? Maybe I'm just not getting it.
Okay, so let's say you're coming out with a nootropic or a pre-workout.
Mhm.
The consumer is expecting to see 6 grams of citrulline because for whatever reason, we know that 3 grams is effective. We know that 4 grams is effective, but for some reason or other, 6 grams that seems to be like the threshold. And then you get some other, like some jackwad shooting their mouth off saying if it's 4 grams, it's underdosed. No, numbnuts. It's between 3 and 10 grams is the effective dosing of citrulline. So when you're putting out together a product, you can get by with 3 grams of citrulline. At the same time, from an evidence or a science-based point of view, that the 3 grams is going to work. But you're going to launch you're going to launch a new pre-workout. We'll call it Performax Pump X, as what this imaginary product we're creating here.
Yeah.
When you go to launch it, 3 grams works, and maybe you want to put in, 1.5 grams of nitrosogene, or 600 milligrams of Vaso 6, or the new Cardia 6 that Matt's coming out with, or any of these other ingredients, or 500 milligrams of Vasodrive, to where you'll get these complementary and additive effects, but you're still going to get shouted out at for saying, so do you just give in and put the 6 grams in there, even though it's going to be way more expensive, or not?
Yeah. I think I kind of think you do. I kind of think to some degree you kind of like, at the end of the day, as a company, we can understand the science and everything. But if we're not servicing what the consumer wants, then we're not being a good company. So if the consumers are constantly saying, hey, we need 6 grams, and we're trying to basically go against that big hurdle that no, there's tons of research on 3 grams. You really don't necessarily need 6. Plus, when you add other compounds that work, through the same, nitric oxide synthase arginine pathway, that now having more than 3 grams is probably irrelevant. You can only maximize a certain pathway so much. But that's like going up against, 1 million people that are just like, no, screw you, I want 6. So it's funny because, we want to be, very scientific and very, going off what the literature says. At the end of the day, we have to be able to sell the product. We have to appease the consumer. So I think you do, to some degree, have to kind of do what is expected, while at the same time, hopefully, adding innovation and doing things different, maybe in a different way, through other ingredients, through other pathways. But if it's such commonplace, it is hard to get it's hard not to appease them, because you're just going to get called out. You're going to say, oh, that's underdose, I'm not going to buy that. And if they're not buying it, then we can't put out more products. So it is a kind of crazy balancing act, because of course I have my own thoughts on it, but if it's not selling, then my thoughts don't mean anything. So I think you do have to appease the consumer, while at the same time kind of hopefully doing it in a way that you don't feel just like a complete sellout or like you're just doing this just for what the consumer wants. You're actually doing it because it works. And I think that's where it's like, 6 grams of citrulline. Could you get by with 3? Absolutely. There's tons of research at 3. But does it hurt to have 6? And if 6 makes, the consumer happy, no harm, no foul. That's kind of how I see it.
Well, I think that 3 grams and 6 grams, there is a difference because, number one, the cost will definitely be significantly different. So that's not entirely true. But yes, the consumer expects 6. And at the end of the day, besides the fact that we're putting out formulas, we're also running a business of selling product. Unfortunately, it's very, very hard to go against the consumer when he's calling you out that you're underdosing a product, especially if you put out a product that has 6 grams and all of a sudden you're putting 4 grams or 3 grams. Is it effective? 100% yes. But unfortunately, you will be called out. You will not win that battle. Then you have a bunch of douchebag competitors who are going to be pointing out to the fact that, that you're underdosing a product now. It's inevitable. It will happen. In terms of innovations, there is tons of innovations. There's tons of new trademark ingredients that are popping out left and right. Are they effective? 99% of them not. They're not. They fancy, they cool. My manufacturer asked me a couple of days ago on a certain combination that I kind of do pretty often. He goes to me, why don't you trademark it? I'm like, and call it what? Apollon Factor X or some shit like that? I mean, it makes no sense. And the consumer, yes, we have to educate the consumer on innovations. We have to educate consumer on our products. But the consumer is also educated. We all have our own consumers that kind of almost like a cult following. There are certain things that they expect from us, and they know us, and they know what we do. And they will expect that we deliver each and every time we release a new product. And the consumer is not that stupid. I've seen products where they have trademark ingredients where it's a combination of 2 or 3 different ingredients, and they actually list it. And then you see a total milligram per serving, and you can clearly see it's severely underdosed, but it has a little R or a little TM or whatever at the end, and all of a sudden it's called, something fancy and innovative. Well, it's not. I think I've used Huperzine only once. That was like 5 or 6 years ago. Ever since then, I haven't used it personally. I think that transparent labels are great because the consumer gets to see exactly, especially the consumer that is educated. Somebody like Lukasz, he will get the transparent, label, and he's going to be able to tell, okay, this is shit, this is good, this is shit, this is good. We talked about a certain brand, yesterday or something, and Lukasz sent immediately, pre-workout good, fat burner shit, because he can identify. And this is our type of a consumer. We're not doing proprietary blends because, yes, there are certain companies that are doing proprietary blends and they actually honest and good. ASC Supplements comes to mind. Jake is a great guy, and his pre-workout, actually one of my favorite pre-workouts on the market, and he changed my mind. We actually talked about dosages and stuff like that. He decided to hide it. But at the end of the day, if I want to really copy it, nobody's going to be able to stop me because I can figure out more or less I know what's in it because he lists what's in it. He doesn't list how much. But I still know what kind of ingredients he's using. And I do know what is the approximate dosage that actually will work on a consumer. So you can figure it out. The truth is we cannot hide. We can't. At this point, anyone can copy anyone. But at the same time, products like we produce, like Aaron produces, I'm honestly not freaking out or nervous or get scared by competition. And the reason for that is because we actually put out products that are not cheap. 99%, it's a business for us, so obviously we want to make money. But the other brands, the other brand owners, they primarily driven by the profits. That's what they driven. For me, it's a little bit more. It's pride. I like what I do. And I don't mind that if my product actually costs a little bit more than it used to cost the previous version, but they're driven by profits. So what they do, they might copy you, and I've seen actually certain products that are almost like copycats. And I've seen different patterns also where you see, oh wow, the first 3 or 4 ingredients are fully dosed. Not only are they fully dosed, there is more than you're supposed to have. And then you go to the bottom and you realize the expensive ingredients are actually underdosed. So they definitely, the competition is definitely very, very clever, and they try to profit and they try to maximize their profits while minimizing their expenses. I still think you can stand out by putting out top-notch products. You will always have, like, listen, BMW and Mercedes, they great cars, and they still compete against each other. Yet they profitable. Yet you have diehard Mercedes fans and you have diehard BMW fans. They almost the same. They in the same category. It's Lamborghini and fucking Ferrari. You always will have a competition. And that's okay to have a healthy competition. You can even be respectful to your competition. That's not a problem. But proprietary blends, I've talked to a brand owner that has a full disclosure label, and he actually told me that he's considering going to proprietary blends because he wants to hide his formula. What the fuck are you going to hide? Well, the only thing you can hide is how much you're using. But the thing is, if your previous product had 20 grams per serving, and all of a sudden I see that you're using 12, I know exactly what you're doing. And so will your consumer. We have to give consumer a little bit more credit. Yes, we need to educate them without a doubt. Yes, we need to tell them about certain things, why we're doing and how we do it and how they can benefit from it. But at the end of the day, they're not stupid. 3 grams of citrulline will work beautifully, absolutely no problem. But at the same time, if you use 6 before, your competitor is using 6, you're almost obligated to use 6. This is where the business aspect is coming into a play. It's pure business. And you can go and say, like, talk to Robert Schinetsky or talk to this guy or talk to that guy. Ask them, and they will explain to you. They will educate you. But the consumer is going to go like, oh, look, $50 for this, $50 for this. This has 6 grams of citrulline. This has 3 grams of citrulline. I'm buying 6. Is he wrong? I mean, probably on a technical aspect, yes, but from a business perspective, he's right, and you just lost the sale. Even though 3 and 6 grams of citrulline definitely will have a difference. That's a very expensive ingredient.
You also need to take in perspective what's in the entire formula, not only just one ingredient, right?
Oh, yeah. Even like take citrulline melee, for example, right? We know that the ratio is 2-to-1. And all of a sudden, I see 8 grams of citrulline melee, and you go and you're impressed. Wow, nice. But then you see it's not 2-to-1, it's 1-to-1. You see the differences, and like, okay, this brand just saved a little bit of money. Sometimes they don't disclose that it's 1-and-1. So these little tricks are employed all the time, and sometimes a transparent label can actually be not entirely transparent either.
Of course. That's why I always say, take a look on the entire formula. Let's say, as you mentioned, like 3 grams of citrulline versus 3 grams of citrulline. Some products may have, like, let's say, okay, 6 grams of citrulline, but the other ingredients will be pixie dusted. Well, on the other hand, you will have let's say, like, a product will have 3 grams of pure citrulline, and let's say like 3 or 4 ingredients that will be clinically dosed and awesome, and will, like, have this synergy effect with the citrulline and will complement each other. Which product will be better? Of course, the second one. So yeah, you always need to, like, stay educated and be on top of your game. So yeah, that's why I value the Apollon so much.
Yeah, I think we have to give the consumer, credit, because obviously our consumers are far more educated. But I still think these types of podcasts and things where we're talking about this are healthy to further educate them. Because, for example, going back to exactly my point earlier, is if I had a pre-workout that's 6 grams citrulline, and that was pretty much the only pump ingredient in there, And then I had a pre-workout that had 3 grams citrulline and 1.5 grams of nitrosamine. The 1.5 grams of nitrosamine and 3 grams citrulline will probably outperform the 6 grams citrulline, in my opinion, probably significantly. But from a consumer's perspective, they're going to go, oh, well, kind of like what you're saying, Lucas. Oh, well, first ingredient, 3 versus 6, I'm going to go with the 6. But you're not looking at the deeper level there of how nitrosamine and citrulline, work synergistically together through the same exact pathway, where that's probably going to be maximized far greater than 6 grams of citrulline. But the consumer is so trained to expect to see 6 that if they don't see the 6, it's like they don't even need to go deeper than the label. They go 3, okay, no. Oh, 6, okay, I'm going to go with that one. And that's where, the consumer deserves a lot of credit, versus 10, 15 years ago. But I still think there's a lot of education that needs to happen from our perspective so that we don't get forced into cookie cutter type formulas where we can further explain this is why we did this and you should understand this and not look at things so surface level, but just dig a little bit deeper, And I think if we can get to that point, that's where I think we can start to see a lot more differentiated formulas. It doesn't have to just be 6 grams citrulline, 3.2 grams beta alanine, 2 grams of taurine and 400 milligrams caffeine. We can start to create some differentiations there. But until the consumer kind of wises up to that, I think we're going to be stuck in a situation where it's a lot of pre-workouts are going to look the same.
And you know what, Aaron, something that you touched upon, and I actually really, really liked it. You made a very good point about your product, where you said that in a store they're not going to be able to sell it as much because the consumer doesn't know. And the problem is that because they don't know the ingredients or whatnot. The problem is that I think that another major downfall is actually the retailers. They probably gonna fucking hate me for this, but I don't give a fuck. They're gonna push the products that are the highest margins. They're gonna push the products that are, not necessarily what's beneficial for the consumer, and that's obviously a problem. And you're right what you said about the podcast and people like Robert who are actually knowledgeable about it. Definitely, it serves a huge purpose because. I know actually from my perspective, and that's actually was said also about your product, where somebody said that I got a lot of obviously heat for the high stim products that we have. Some of them, not all of them are high stims, but some of them. And your pre-workout with 400 milligrams of caffeine is also no joke, considering that you have area geransis and stuff like that. So it's not a weak product. It's definitely above average in terms of how strong it is. It's a strong pre-workout. And I remember years ago where brands like mine and yours got criticized. And I remember people saying anything above 200-300 milligrams of caffeine, vasodilation, and it's going to kill you, and it's a heart attack and whatnot. It was nonstop. And then I remember Robert actually wrote a piece. I don't know if it was for Apollon or you wrote for somebody else, but I remember I fucking posted it everywhere, proving that there is nothing wrong with 600 milligrams of caffeine, 400 milligrams of caffeine, or even as high as 700-800 milligrams of caffeine.
I think there's a lot of research that even goes up.
There's a lot, but nobody knew. Yeah, nobody knew about it. I'm not saying nobody, but most people didn't know about it. They felt like they're going to die from it. These things, they have 200-300 milligrams of caffeine in them. And I own a gym, and I see people walking in the gym, and he's buying one with 300 milligrams, and half an hour later, he's buying another one with another 300 milligrams of it, and he's 100% fine. So yeah, educating is definitely the way to go. And just for the record, I also actually tried combining 3 or 4 grams of citrulline with 1,500 of nitrosamine. Honestly, I liked it more than 6 grams of citrulline. That was my personal opinion. And again, it's just to convey the message to the consumer. And this is, again, we're podcasts and us, and that's our responsibility. Another issue that we might have is like not to get overly technical and explain it more in layman's terms where people actually get to understand what we are talking about, because sometimes the language that is used and explanation and, the technical aspects can be either boring or they can be very, very confusing. But, in practical thing, if you tell somebody, well, take 6 grams of citrulline, now take 4 grams of citrulline and 1500 of nitrosamine, go 2 days to the gym, use one version and the second day the second version, and see what works best. And 9 out of 10 will say that 4 grams of citrulline with 1500 of nitrosamine will work better. And I think that the word of mouth, and it's almost like wildfire, it will definitely spread and people will believe, because clearly formulas the ones that you're putting out are getting more and more popular. There's definitely a market for it. You might not catch the wide market like Cellucor or somebody like that, but that's fine. They have their own market. But if we can get one, 3-4 years ago, if somebody told me that Assassin's going to be as popular as it is today, I would be like, okay, that's not going to happen. We have 3 people that are using it, and that's it. The same thing. Hypermax has 400 milligram. The original formula has 400 milligram of caffeine, I believe. I remember that when I did 450 with Hooligan, my manufacturer said to me, anything above 300 will never sell. And that was 6 years ago. So I think the market is definitely shifting, it's definitely changing, and I think it's going in the right direction, but it's still an uphill battle for sure.
Well, I think there's a couple things there too, like going back to the education side of it. I can hear myself. Like things like caffeine in the context of working out and vasoconstriction. What we know actually is, in the context of actually working out, it increases peripheral, vasodilation. And so this whole thing of like, oh, that's too much caffeine, that's going to kill my pumps. You just don't understand. And so now it's our duty to kind of educate. But that brings it to the next step, which was your comment on retailers, which is there's so many levels between me and my consumer. There's the distributor, there's the retailer, there's the guy behind the shelf that retailer hired to sell product. And that's, I think, where the message is drastically lost, is we could have this great formula, very, very well thought out, and I could personally speak to it very, very well. But when you walk on the shelf, Hypermax is just one of 30 pre-workouts on the shelf. And it really just depends what that guy working in that retail shop really cares about, / what his boss is telling him to sell that makes him the most margin. And so that's, I think, why I think we're starting to see the emergence of brand owners, not just in our industry, but just across, all industries, kind of trying to get out there and you kind of be the face of the brand to help have that direct connection with their consumer, to where they could then actually educate specifically around the product and not have to rely on someone else to basically give a butchered explanation of the product. And I think that's really, really important. And, we're starting to see some really, really successful brands doing just that, where the owner is coming out, talking directly to their consumers and having that level of education. I think that's really, really important. And probably something that I need to do a whole lot more. I just, I don't like the attention. I don't like to get out there too much. I kind of like to be in the behind the scenes, kind of making stuff happen. But I could be doing a disservice to my consumers,
Awesome. That was a really good conversation. I'll float right through that. That was awesome. Let's catch up on a couple of these comments real quick. John's been using Assassin and El Jefe. That's why he's jumping a bare knuckle. They're not hitting the same, taking them 4 days a week. Yeah, that would you're definitely getting into the tolerant zone. And you're drinking a cup of coffee while the pre-workout. Yeah, in that case, we're definitely gonna say let's cut back on the stims for a little while.
Just cut back on coffee and you will be good.
Yeah. Here's a new commenter. So how would someone that sensitive to caffeine start taking pre-workout? They've been working out for 6 months, and I've only been using pump formulas. I don't drink coffee or energy drinks also. My initial thing was, do you feel like you need caffeine? I mean, you don't have to start having caffeine in your pre-workout. If you don't need it and you can just train your ass off without caffeine, you feel naturally awake, alert, your nutrition, your sleep's great, you don't have to go down the caffeine route. But even then, if you want to, just slowly start titrating the dose. Take your pump formula and then just have like a small cup of coffee with it, or like half of a caffeine tab or something like that. What do you guys think?
That's what Robbie said earlier, that the pre-workout is just like individual preference. So based on your individual thing, if you want to drink coffee before your workout, drink coffee. If you want like an energy drink, go with that. If you want like non-stim stuff, go with that. So yeah, man, do what's right for you, and don't look at other people. If someone is like me that likes like a lot of amount of stems, don't be Lukasz, But it's just what I prefer. But if you feel good, if you don't need any like super extra high kicking stems, just like go with the non-stem. But if you want to experiment, start slowly. For example, you can buy the caffeine tablets. You can like add to your non-stem pre-workout, and you can start slowly with like 100 milligrams of caffeine and go with that. See how your body reacts.
I agree with Lukasz. I mean, if you're stating that you're caffeine sensitive, nobody says you have to take caffeine. I mean, there is no specific rule. There are so many pre-workouts with different ingredient profiles. You have to find out which one works for you. If the pump formula works for you, great. Then stick to it. If you you say you're sensitive and you don't drink coffee and you don't drink energy drinks, if you don't need anything extra, like an extra kick or a boost for your workout, then stick with pump. There's nothing wrong with it. That's the reason why they called non-stim pre-workouts. You can get non-stim pre-workouts that have great pump ingredients profile. Some of them have great focus ingredients profile and have absolutely, no stems. But if you want to try stems, you want to experiment, a small cup of coffee maybe, or like Lukasz said, caffeine tablet, they usually come, I think, 100, 200 milligram. You can try and take something small, but there is no specific rule. You don't have to. Just because everybody or majority of people are doing it doesn't mean you have to. You don't have to go crazy.
On how that's written, it sounds as if you feel like you might be missing out, because like a lot of other people are taking pre-workouts, and I don't think you're missing out at all. I think if you're using a good pump formula and you're sensitive to caffeine, you have enough energy, I would just continue doing what you're doing. But just like everyone else said, if you do feel the need, then yeah, I guess starting with caffeine and small amount and moving it up. But it doesn't even sound like that's what the question is, or really what you want. It sounds like you feel as if you're missing out by not taking a pre-workout. So in that case, maybe like, for example, like hypermax, you could try a half a scoop. That's 100 milligrams caffeine, and you get, you're taking a pre-workout now, and you're part of the club, and you get to, you get to start low. But yeah, I would say that you're not missing out. It's nothing, any more special than your pump formula if you have good energy. And if you do want to experiment, just buy whatever pre-workout you're interested in. Start with probably around a half a scoop, a quarter scoop, and just kind of move it up from there. But yeah, it doesn't sound like just adding a cup of coffee or caffeine is what you're looking for. It sounds like you want to experiment with pre-workouts as if you're missing out on something special.
Yeah, Aaron's probably right. It feels like it's either you're putting pressure on yourself, or it's peer pressure, or I want to, I want to do what other kids are doing. Completely unnecessary.
You're not missing out, is the point.
Spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. Is there a supplement to lower drug tolerance? I'm going to assume this is in relation to maybe caffeine or any other stimulant where you develop, you habituate to it and you develop a tolerance.
Just take more drugs.
That too.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Up the dose of tren. Up the dose of tren and test. Just do it. Now, short of just cycling your stimulant intake, no, I'm not aware of anything. I know there are certain supplements that help eliminate caffeine from the body faster, but that's not going to necessarily reset your tolerance or lower your tolerance, short of just cycling off of it entirely, or very significantly varying your stimulant intake across the week. So, take for the day that you had no sleep, you take that 400 milligram pre-workout, whereas the day you had great sleep, you either go non-stim or do like 150 milligrams of caffeine. And that helps you kind of slow down the potential tolerance effects that are going to have on it. But I mean, y'all have any other tips, suggestions, ideas?
Robert, are you saying you don't believe in adrenal fatigue?
Never. Nope. I believe you can be stressed and not sleeping well, but I think adrenal fatigue is a big freaking farce.
Yeah. Remember, there used to be supplements. There might still be supplements that were made
CTD
for adrenal,
labs.
for adrenal fatigue. So, the way you lower your tolerance is stop taking it for a while.
Yeah. And to get around those headaches, use some stuff like adaptogens or non-stim nootropics. I mean, those can help with like taking 2 grams of L-tyrosine, taking between 300 and 600 milligrams of rhodiola, some KSM-66 ashwagandha would help with that. Neurofactor, all these other non-stimulant kind of nootropics can help take the place of caffeine. Not exactly, but it'll give you that mental boost that you're looking for. But if you've been doing like 600 milligrams of caffeine a day and you go to 0, it's going to hurt no matter what you're taking. If you're like most people, it's going to hurt those first couple of days.
I believe that cordyceps and turkey tail from mushrooms have this effect that they can lower the side effects, I would say, from drugs. So maybe take a look at in the literature on this one, but I don't have any fancy other recommendations.
Yeah. Brooke, I personally have found that I can find the energy or motivation to work out if I'm in a good mood. Hence my transitioning to more nootropic-based pre-workouts. Sandy will back me up. Yeah, so Sandy's definitely she needs to be like good headspace, happy, feeling slightly euphoric, and then it doesn't matter. Like it could be 100 milligram pre-workout of caffeine or it could be 400 milligrams, but there's got to be some nootropics or some kind of like mood enhancing stuff there. So mood and focus, and then it gets her in the right space. And Brooke is much the same way. Aaron, is it hell or high water for you? You're going to train, or do you kind of need to be in the right mindset or have the right boost?
No, I'm gonna train no matter what. But it is interesting how different a session can be based on a day. You know what I mean? Like we have a really good day, be it sales wise or formulation or whatever, and I just like I feel like I'm on top of the moon, then I still take the pre-workout probably out of habit, but it just it's that much more effective. And if I'm having a shitty day, generally I'm gonna not have a great workout, but I tend to try and get in there and make it happen regardless, because at the end of that session I'm always happy that I did.
Earlier, we touched on something. I wanted to get your input on it. You mentioned something that made me think of this. You said, if you're having a great night's sleep, you wake up, your nutrition's on point, your recovery's on point, you may not need that full serving of pre-workout. You can only go half scoop on it. I'm much of the same mindset where you titrate the dose based on your sleep levels, how much energy you want. Because I'm just looking like, I know where I'm going to be. Like, so I'm kind of like dosing the pre-workout or choosing this pre-workout to bring me up to that level that I know I want to be at. Shane mentioned something last week where he says, it doesn't matter if I slept great or if I slept shitty. He said, I'm going to take the blow your face off pre-workout every opportunity I get to, because he says, if I'm feeling terrible, it's going to bring me up. If I'm already feeling great, it's going to make me that much higher, where I don't know if it actually works that way or not. But what are your thoughts on it?
I think that I personally, for me, it works actually more the way Aaron described. If I had a shitty day, I don't give a fuck what pre-workout I take. I mean, it's just in my mind. I just don't feel right. And, it's going to affect me because, I mean, let's face it, we are all emotional people. We are driven by emotions. We are driven by, I mean, there's so many factors: lack of sleep, stress, family issues, business issues, physical issues. There are so many. So, I might take the greatest pre-workout that's going to fucking, light a fire up my ass. It's not going to help. I'm still not going to have a productive workout, not a fully productive workout. We are driven by circumstances. So, I'm going to have to disagree on that one, and I'm going to have to agree with Aaron, because I think that it's all depends on how we feel that day. I'll give you an example. So, just before the podcast, we talked a little bit about the fact that I just came from Texas and I trained with Branch Warren, right? So I didn't have pre-workout. I didn't have anything on me, and it was at Metroflex. No AC, no nothing. Well, Robert, you know what kind of person I am.
Oh, it's hot as fuck in Texas this
Yeah,
weekend too.
it was very hot, but I'm very, very, I love challenge. I love challenge. So we were basically, it was a morning workout, too early for me because I work out generally, at a certain time, which is like between 2 to 5 p.m. And this was around 11 a.m. And we got to Metroflex, not my basically type of a gym where I usually train. But I mean, I liked it. I embraced it, of course. But Branch brought so much energy and the way he trains and the way he is. For me, that will light up a fire up my ass. I was actually barely getting out of the car. I was so tired. I didn't sleep good. It was the first time in a hotel. I was drained. I don't even know if I had. I think like I had like a shitty little breakfast or with absolutely no carbs or anything because I had another video shoot. So everything was pointing out to a shitty workout. Everything. And just the fact that I finished the workout with one of the probably most intense guys in the industry, and I was looking at some of the footage that we shot and stuff like that, I didn't need a pre-workout. I had a better workout than on most pre-workouts I've ever had. And then the following day, we went on a shooting range and we stayed there under the Texas heat for about 4 or 5 hours, no food, no nothing. And we went to the gym and I was literally like whining like a little bitch. I was like, I can do this, I can do this. I mean, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. It was pathetic, until we got to the gym floor. And again, I was with him and he brought so much motivation and inspiration and the way he trained. I was like, holy shit, we are the same age. There is no way I'm slowing down. So I'm almost like saying that pre-workouts don't work, but of course that's not the case. They do. It's just there are so many factors that go into your workout. So many factors. It's a lot more than just a pre-workout, and it doesn't matter how good it is. If you feel like shit that day for whatever reason, or you're lacking motivation, or you don't believe in yourself, I mean, so many aspects, you're gonna have a crappy workout. That's the bottom line.
Well, it just goes back to what these are, right? These are supplements.
Yeah.
They're that last 5% that you need. The other 95% is everything else. So I think there's a place for them if that 95% is dialed in. But if that 95% is dialed in, if you're operating, let's say, at 50%, you're not going to notice the difference between being 50 and 55. You're still going to feel like shit. But if you're operating at 90, 95, you're going to notice the difference between being at 90, 95 and being 100. And I think that's where supplements can really help. And I think that it goes back to the question prior with the guy who really wanted to take a pre-workout, even though it sounds like he doesn't need it, which is like you're not really missing out on anything too special. You know what I mean? I think pre-workouts are amazing. I think they're a great tool, but I think they're just that. I think they're a tool to be used. I don't think that they need to be like a crutch to be leaned on.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's funny because I think that the times have evolved and changed to such degree. I just did like my own 12-week transformation where I trained and I dieted and I did this and that. And we all know what goes into it, like in terms of discipline and stuff. I mean, I'm 46, I'm not 26. So everything is a little bit harder and more challenging. But the interesting part about it, just like Aaron said about pre-workout, I remember going back 15, 20, 25 years ago, we trained and like you said, 5%, and it's absolutely true. When we trained, we would approach the biggest, the most ripped guy in the gym and we would ask, how do you train? What exercises do you do? How do you eat? Those were the typical questions that we would ask. Right now, when people see that, the little transformation that I accomplished, the first question, it's 9 out of 10. What drugs are you taking?
How much test?
How much testosterone are you taking? What's up? What is? Nobody gives a shit how I train. Nobody gives a shit about how I diet.
What's your cycle?
Yeah, and definitely pre-workouts have their place. They're a great tool to help with a workout, but it's 5%.
Well, you're also Russian, Robbie. You get access to all the really good shit that we can't get anymore. You got all that Soviet secret sauce.
Well, I get the shit from Uzbekistan that Aaron couldn't get.
Russians always came up with the most fanciest stuff.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
That's why they always dominate the Olympics.
I don't know if I want to actually say this or maybe not, but it's I almost want to go back to like the 70s and 80s where you knew who you knew who the enemies were. You knew we knew what the commies. We knew what Russia was doing. Not that I want the Soviet Union to be back in existence, but it seemed like a simpler time back then compared to these days and all of that other stuff. It's I don't know, or maybe that's just
it was more fun because Americans were Americans, Soviets were Soviets, and they hated each other, and everybody loved it. I mean, we all loved it. There was certain fun in it. Right now in the United States, you have Americans hating Americans. It's kind of sad.
it is agreed.
Yeah, you need like a. It's sad, but you need like a common enemy to bring people together.
You do.
And I think that's what we're missing.
Brooke, $5 donation. Thank you so much, Brooke. You're awesome. Almost forgot the donation towards fixing the postal service, excluding people from the SEC, gold sinks, and innovation. There we go. Yes, thank you so much, Brooke. Yesterday we were up in Dallas area. Right, we were actually in Barry, Texas. So you're not all the way quite up to Dallas. You're out. I guess it's halfway between where Waco is and where Dallas is. So on the south side of Dallas, and there's a bunch of like University of Texas grads there, Texas A&M grads, and Shane and I are the two lone LSU people that roll in there. And I don't know how many of y'all actually follow college football or not, but there's talk about 10 years ago, there was a major realignment in college football where Missouri and Texas A&M jumped into the SEC. Some other schools joined the Big 12. Some other schools left the Big 12. The Pac-10 became the Pac-12. The Big 10 added more teams, and now I think there's 14 teams in the conference that's called the Big 10. It makes no fucking sense. But now there's talk of UT and Oklahoma wanting to jump into the SEC. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want you guys. There's nothing southeast about Texas and Oklahoma. If you look at a map of the United States, like A&M shouldn't be in the SEC. Missouri sure as fuck isn't southeast. So it's all a money grab because the SEC has been kind of the dominant conference in college football for 10 or 15 years. And so everybody sees the big TV deals that we have with ESPN and all of that stuff. And that's originally why A&M left the Big 12 was because UT had their own special television network through ESPN called the Longhorn Network. But now it's funny that UT's kind of trending down, but they want to jump into the SEC where the rest of the big boys play football. So some background on that. I don't know if any of y'all actually follow college football or if that's just me. That is that's what I figured. Brooke again. I think brand integrity helps consumers trust when brands delve into some innovations. If something appears out of left field from Apollon, for example, I'm going to trust that it was made intelligently. I would agree with that. What do you think, Aaron? Brand trust, establishing trust with your consumer allows you the ability to be a little bit more flexible, innovative, and kind of going out on a limb?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think that makes sense across any industry. If you can create a good experience with your consumer, and the consumer buys into more than just the product, but they buy into what the brand stands for. I think that obviously allows for a lot of flexibility, and I think that's what a lot of companies kind of miss is looking at it where they're almost not even a company per se. They're or a brand, I should say. They're more of people that just push product, and I think it's very, very important to create a level of trust with the consumer, to where they're bought into the brand message, what the brand stands for, why the brand does what it does, not just the product itself. And I think if you can do that, then you can kind of open up a little bit more and do a little bit, different things, and have that consumer kind of trust that you have their best interests at heart, Yeah.
Have any I know you keep up to date with all the new ingredients coming out. Have you any of the newer ones popping up on the scene kind of piqued your interest or anything like that? I mean, we've had a couple of different, I won't say novel, but different spins on the same old thing coming out as far as pump supplements, energy boosters, like any of the caffeine alternatives grab your interest. Dynamine, Teacrine, Zynamite. What's the other one? I always forget. N Extra or any of those other ones, any things like that?
No, not really. I think the one that is interesting to me right now from a use experience is the 3D pump. From a paper experience, I was just like, what? It doesn't make any sense. But once I got an opportunity to sample and try it, that that Indian gooseberry extract is very clearly the special sauce, and I feel like they must have, wanted to co-administer it with a few other things in a way to maybe market it better, maybe make it more approachable to the consumer, maybe give it a little bit more, understanding. But yeah, when I looked at it on paper, I wasn't, impressed by any means. But once I tried it, I was thoroughly impressed. So that's probably the only one that right now, in terms of these new trademark ingredients that are coming out, that really, kind of gets me excited. None of the other ones, none of them are bad, you know what I mean? But like Dynamine, for example, pretty good stem, but it was on the back of DMHA getting banned. Like, that's not a one-for-one, like, comparison, Right. So I do think that there is some exciting stuff coming out, but nothing too exciting for me right now.
Yeah, I'm very curious because you and I have talked a lot offline about just 3D pump in general, and just going back and forth on what we were thinking is there something more to what's going on here than we can actually see on paper, like you mentioned. So I went on Amazon and I bought a bunch of the Indian gooseberry or amla fruit capsules, and I think that should be arriving tomorrow. So I'm going to try that on its own and just see how that works.
Try Capros. Have you tried Capros?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but I'm assuming they have some sort of specialized extract. And I think that's where the special sauce is obviously coming from. Because you can get the same sort of mechanism of action of increasing endothelial nitric oxide synthase through the polyphenols in pine bark extract. But I don't think that it wouldn't make sense to me that in their Indian gooseberry extract they standardized for general polyphenols. It would only make sense to me that they found one very specific compound that they're standardizing for, in a very similar sense to Vaso 6 standardizing for that one very specific epicatechin molecule. So I think that has to be what it is, but I also don't think that they're going to open up about that. So
that's what I'm curious. Do you have to publicize what you're standardizing for?
It depends on how specific you want to be. Not theoretically, from a labeling standpoint, I believe it is required if you're standardizing for certain compounds to list what the standardization is. But we also see that not always happening. For example, Vaso 6 is listed as green tea extract, right? So I believe the FDA does require you to list the standardizations of specific extracts. Is that the first thing they're going to enforce, given what's going on, what's on the market? Probably not.
Not even close.
Yeah, I've seen some of the newer ingredients, and I like to experiment. I like to try them all, and I like to do different combinations. I like to try them, by themselves and in combination with other things. So, for example, an extra, I tried on its own, nothing. Was not impressed at all. When I tried it with caffeine, I thought that it did enhance slightly the effects of caffeine. So there was definitely something to it. But, to say that there was a significant change, I can't really say that. Same thing as with that Zoom XR, I think, the caffeine.
Yeah, it's a longer lasting form of caffeine.
So there was a very, very slight, if any, noticeable difference between that and dicaffeine Malay. Very, very slight. I couldn't say that, but the price, of course, the cost of it is definitely a lot higher. So, you have to justify it. I tried that. Dynamine and Ticrene, it's, again, like Aaron said, it basically came after DMHA Dynamine, but to compare would be a little bit unfair, because it's not even close. I think that in a combination with caffeine and certain stimulants, that definitely you will feel something. But again, does it justify the cost? Because at the end of it, your consumer, you can give them whatever you want. But at the end, like TJ says of Fitness Deal News, labels are just labels, and at the end, it's how you feel. Does a certain combination of certain ingredients give you, the effect that you desire. And especially if it's something expensive. So you see some products that have like all these trademarks, but when you try them, you go like, okay, like what the fuck? It's the creatine monohydrate and Creapure. Is there a difference? Beta-alanine and carnosine. There are so many, or alpha size and alpha GPC generic. I mean, basically, it's the same thing. You have my doctor was prescribing to me Arimidex as part of my TRT. Do you know what the cost of Arimidex is as an anti-estrogen? I mean, I asked Marina because obviously she owns a pharmacy, and I was just curious. The cost of Arimidex of 30 tabs is, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere around $600 or maybe $800. That's the cost of Arimidex. Now, you have generic right now that came in a form of an Astrozole. Take a guess how much that cost.
$80?
$6. You pay, and it's exactly the same thing. There is no difference. So, I was also lucky enough to test the 3D pump, and I liked it. I really did like it. But I liked it more when I actually use double the recommended dosage. I liked it more than I would use, say, even citrulline at 6 grams. I just couldn't justify that. It's on paper. It's very, very simple. It's a very, very simple, but you can trademark anything these days. I also use some other combinations, like say for nitrosogen and citrulline, and I liked it more. And when you compare the cost was more effective. But every time you have a trademark on your label, it does help with sales. Not saying that it's not a good product. I do agree it's a good product. It's a solid product, solid ingredients. It can't be bad. But at the same time, you're still getting, I believe, 3 grams of citrulline. I still believe that you're getting, 1 or 2 grams of glycerol? I think 1.
Yeah, 2 grams of Hypermax.
2 grams of Hypermax. So, there is nothing innovative in terms of the ingredients themselves. That's just the way it is. But it's put together, and now it's trademarked. And does it justify the cost? Is it the best thing on the market in terms of pump? I've used the Cardia 6. Matt sent me some, and I was totally impressed. There wasn't much of a difference between that and Vesa 6 in terms of effects, because I used them on 2 different days. But Cardia 6, I felt, especially if you're very lean, I felt more vascularity and hardness to the pump than Vesa 6. But there are so many different combinations. They also trademark ingredients, but there are so many combinations that you can play with. So in terms of anything that came out recently, Zynomite I didn't like at all. I felt absolutely nothing from it, and it's a very expensive trademark ingredient, but I didn't feel much in terms of effects. So I think that there is a lot of innovation in terms of the names and trademarks and new releases, but how effective they are they as game-changing as maybe ephedrine was, or as game-changing as DMAA was? Not even close. None of them. Nothing popped out. Yet they come out left and right, probably like on a daily basis. If not on a daily, definitely on a weekly basis. But something that's going to, completely change the game. And, while everybody's screaming game changer, there is nothing. There is nothing, it's just a combination of different things put together. I've seen trademark where they use 100 milligram or 200 milligram of alpha GPC in a trademark. What is 100 or 200 milligram of alpha GPC going to do? We know that it's not enough, but it's in a trademark with another 2 ingredients or something like that. And all of a sudden it looks fancy, and it probably will help with sales. So this is the difference between the effectiveness and the business aspect of it. And and both of them are right. Both of them are very, very important. Don't get me wrong, because we're releasing products to sell. And if we don't sell, we can make other products. Again, just like Aaron said, I agree with that. But is effectiveness and business, which one do you go to? Because if you go for business, get 2 or 3 trademark ingredients, the cheapest you can get, put them on a fancy label, boom, you're selling them, and they cost nothing, and they look very, very impressive. And then you have a couple of non-trademark ingredients, just generics, that will provide you with just as much, if not more, and you will be able to stack the label a lot more than with trademarks because you're going to be so limited because the cost of an extra, 3D pump, dynamine, they will all add up. Now imagine how many things between those. I just looked into combination of 3 ingredients that are trademarked, and the cost of them together came to about $14 or $15, just 3 ingredients for one product, $14 or $15. Now imagine how many ingredients you can stack into $14 or $15, and it was actually a pre-workout. And imagine the level of a pre-workout you're going to have, because caffeine costs nothing. Dicaffeine malate doesn't cost much either. If you want to get slightly fancier, you can go with citrate too. Add a little bit of alpha yo, and you're fucking flying for like less than $5. So it all's relative, and you have to choose whether you go with business aspect or you go with effective aspect, and how to properly balance them without cheating your consumer.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there is a place for them. I also just think it depends on the brand specifically, So a lot of these trademarked ingredients, you're basically paying for the research that they conducted, and that they've substantiated, and the claims that they've done, which cost money, obviously. So you're going to pay a premium for something like Alpha Size because they've funded those studies, they did the research, and you're also essentially paying for all the testing and everything like that. That you're getting, a very, very specific compound time and time again. Whereas if you buy generic Alpha GPC, it could be manufactured 10 different ways depending on who you get it from. And the quality could vary dramatically on, one run to the next run. So essentially, I think there is benefits to trademarked materials, but I don't think they're the benefits that the consumer thinks. I think if anything, they're more of a benefit for the brand side of some level of transparency and trust in terms of what you're actually paying for. Whereas I think the consumer sees a trademarked ingredient and they go, "Oh wow, this must be amazing because it's trademarked. It must be something special." But a lot of the times you might be paying for a trademark material just because you're going to get the same exact material, time and time again, and that can help with the consistency of your product, And so I think there is some value there. I just think that it might not be the value the consumer, thinks.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree with that too, because there are so many factors that go into play. Yes, trademark probably protects you to a certain degree with certain ingredients, with certain compounds, definitely. But at the same time, it also depends on where you manufacture your products. I know that we've changed manufacturers a couple of times because I caught manufacturers not being very, very honest, underdosing products. I've seen those things happen again and again. We had one manufacturer that was doing a certain product with us with 2.5 milligram of alpha yohimbe, right? So it was a good product. It was no problem at all. And then exactly the same product with another manufacturer, alpha yohimbe at 2.5 milligram, we ran into it last year. Remember, Robert? It felt like it was 10 milligram. It felt just unbearable. It was so strong that we had to lower it. I think also trademarked some. I've seen. I actually caught one because he admitted to me. That's a long story, but anyway, one manufacturer actually admitted to me that he was putting paradoxin, grains of paradoxin as a trademark ingredient, but was using generic. It was using generic because it's the same shit, but it's going to look more impressive. I mean, obviously, we left that manufacturer, but if he was, but he was offering it to me. I'm pretty sure he was offering it to others, and I'm pretty sure, without throwing accusations or anything, I'm pretty sure if not 9 out of 10, 7 or 8 out of 10 will agree to it because they get to save money, and and now you have a trademark ingredient. So there are so many things that go into it. It depends where you manufacture, where they're sourcing the material, what kind of ingredients, and it just goes on and on and on. But the question is more like, is there anything in terms of trademark that is innovative? There is anything that like really, really groundbreaking, or anything like, that changes the face of the industry of a product? There is nothing. At least I haven't seen anything substantial. I've seen a lot of noise. I've seen when Tikrin came out, everybody went crazy. When Dynamine came out, everybody went crazy. Everybody's still underdosing those things. I mean, they're using 50 milligram or 100 milligram when it's 40%, and there is nothing in it. So they don't even use proper amount. So why are they putting it on a label? Because it looks impressive. It looks impressive that they have that ingredient, even though it doesn't do shit for the product. So we've seen like cookie cutters, and we've seen those things, shady manufacturing, underdosing products, using trademark just to impress the consumer, but the trademark doesn't do shit. Those are the things. But there is nothing that I've seen that I was like, whoa, this is completely changing the face. I talked to Ron Kramer recently, and Ron Kramer is definitely very, very defensive when it comes to his brand, when it comes to nitrates and stuff like that. The man is very proud of what he does. But even he said, like, nitrates aside, what is better out there really than citrulline? And, we could argue, that there is Vaso-6 and Vaso-Drive and whatnot. But citrulline, like you said, citrulline is a staple pretty much in every pre-workout because it's a proven ingredient. That's an ingredient that definitely works. It's an ingredient that's trusted by the consumer. And it still hasn't gone anywhere. Sometimes people are saying, like, why do you need citrulline? You can just use nitrosamine. People believe in the product. It's the same as Coca-Cola now. They know it's a good brand. It's a good product. It's something that will give you the much desired pumps. I mean, we could argue on a 3 to 6 grams what's the effective dose, but at the end of the day, the ingredient itself, regardless of being trademarked or not, is a proven ingredient that works. And I haven't seen none of trademarked ingredients in recent years that really made that much of a statement. I see a lot of hype, and that hype goes away.
Yeah, I would agree.
For the listeners that are watching, this will be last call for questions. If you guys got anything else for Aaron or any of our panel members, get those in because we'll be hopping off here in a little while. Aaron, there is another ingredient. Robbie and I were talking about this ingredient yesterday or the day before. And I know you use it. It's been in a couple of your products as well. So Conaese, Zembrin, the Scaledium tortuosum. So I get it's in Vasomax and it's in Nootropomax too. What is your reasoning for putting them in there? Why do you like the ingredient, and what do you think it brings to those formulas in particular? Because Vasomax is a non-stim formula, so why put the nootropic benefits are like a anti-stress, anti-anxiety ingredient like Scaledium or Conaese in a non-stim pump pre-workout when there's no stims in there?
Just for that nootropic benefit, and I think a lot of people that are taking, going back to that one question from that guy about wanting to take a pre-workout, that he takes a pump formula now. I think a lot of people want a total experience in that scenario where he's not, he's because he's caffeine sensitive, he can't take a normal pre-workout, and so you don't really get that pre-workout experience from just a pump formula. From just the pump formula alone, you're only really getting the pumps. And so I think the idea behind Vasomax was obviously including some nootropics that would almost give you the feeling as if you are taking a pre-workout without having to worry about the caffeine. So I've always liked Conaese. We were actually one of the first to use that material from Aphogetics from South Africa before Conaese was even a thing. So we were sourcing that material probably like 5 years ago. And it was just, and it's kind of funny because it goes back to what Robert was saying. It didn't have a name. It was just the ingredient. And then the ingredient started to get popular. And I think it was around the time that Olympus Labs released Rain. Then they attached the Conaese name to it. So it literally went from a generic material that we were using to now this magical trademark material, but nothing about it ever changed. So yeah, I've always been a fan of it. I like the mood enhancing effects. I don't get a whole lot of focus, but kind of like what you said, the anti-stress and mood enhancement from that material I do like a lot, and I think it is pretty noticeable. The one thing that I haven't done, and just because I just haven't got around to it, is just trying it in high dosages. So I've seen some people take it in very, very high, like I think what Chemix puts like a gram or something.
Yeah, the first version of the pre-workout, they had a gram in it. I think they've dialed it back since, but that initial one.
And from people I've talked to, at a certain dose, it tends to have a stimulatory effect. So at the dose that we're using, 25 milligrams, great mood enhancement, just great overall general well-being. But I would be interested in experimenting it at 500 milligrams a gram and kind of seeing what happens when you go to that realm, so to speak.
Yeah, and that was one of the other things is that, well, the thing with the Gorilla Chemist's pre-workout is that he uses 1,000 milligrams, but he doesn't list the standardization. So, I mean, you could get a generic where yours is standardized for the
He did. Yeah, it's not the actual, because the one that you, Aaron, used, and again, not to shit on Chemix, but the one that you used is, I think, 2-to-1, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a 0.02 mescaline.
The one that he used. The one that he used, I believe, you should look it up because I'm afraid I might be wrong. I think it's like 12 or something like that. So it's not what you think. Because I used yours and I used actually 25, and I've used actually as a standalone, I think I used 50, and I felt phenomenal. When I went to 100, I didn't feel that great. I'm not saying I felt nauseous or anything like that, or adverse reactions or anything. I didn't see significant benefits. But I think that the dose that you use, 25, I think that works great. I mean, more is not always better. But I also think that yours, the purity, it was 2-to-1. I think his is not 2-to-1. I'm almost sure it's not.
Well, I'm talking about the original formula, the original edition of it, not the revamped one, because the original one, I don't think it listed a standardization. That's what I was wondering, but I'm trying
possibly, because I think the last one is, I think 750, but I think it's like 12-to-1. I mean, again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I saw the standardization, and it's not what Aaron used.
When you say last one, you mean the newest one, the newest version? That
possibly.
Okay.
Okay, so there is, all right, in his new nootropic, so it's not in his pre-workout anymore. In the Chemix nootropic, it is Kana standardized to not less than 0.5% alkaloids, and he's got a gram, so 1,000 milligrams of that in there. That's a big boy dose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'd be interested to see how it feels when you start to get up to those dosages, but I've heard that it starts to have a stimulatory effect where you do not get that at all at your lower, like 25 milligram dose.
Yeah.
I think 25 milligram is the actual studied dose as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, the 25 to 50. I think there's a couple all using 50 milligrams. Maybe not.
Apollon, give me some time. I'm going to experiment.
We'll check back with the lab rat in a couple of weeks.
Check back with me and let me know. Yeah, funny.
Awesome. All right, man. Well, then, for listeners tuning in at home, thank you very much for hanging with us. We appreciate this. Big thank you to Aaron jumping in today to fill a slot. We appreciate it, Aaron, for coming in. I hope you enjoyed it and we didn't waste your entire Sunday with our banter.
No, I had a lot of good time. So yeah, if you guys ever need me back on, just let me know.
Awesome. Is there anything you want to touch on or bring up that we didn't address, or something you want to get out?
No, just keep your eye on Performax. We have something big coming, like I alluded to in the beginning of the podcast. So give us a few weeks, and hopefully we can make some waves and start rocking and rolling again. We've been pretty quiet. We've kept our heads down and doing a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's finally time to kind of unveil that. So if you're a fan of Performax, I think you'll really like what we have in store for you guys.
Outstanding. Awesome, man. Thank you very much for hopping on the podcast with us. For all the listeners out there, if you like what we're doing here, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share the video with family, friends, and loved ones. And we will catch you all next time on The Final Scoop.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Take care.
Take care.